just due to your very busy lives, because we had some very high-powered people on our committee who have lots of things going on in their lives. But our goal, and this was part of the whole strategic plan, was to present to the advisory committee regularly to keep you updated on what the library was doing. And that connection with you and local agencies builds a stronger community, which happens to be part of our mission statement, strengthen the community. So we will keep doing this, and sometimes you may not be able to join us, but that's okay, because you'll have other ways of finding out what's going on. So when we last met, doesn't that sound like a book title, When We Last Met? It was over a year ago.
Oh my gosh.
The last meeting of the advisory committee was on November 6, 2019. The last community meeting was November 12th. And then the plan was presented to the board on the 21st, and then Cheryl did a wrap up with the board on December 12th. So we are almost a year out from the last time you were together as a group, which seems amazing and not amazing because of COVID. And so after that last meeting, oops, we want to go back. After that last meeting, what happened? You did this amazing strategic plan with us, and you left some of it up to us. The matrix was not complete at that time. It was up to us to create a matrix that would show our progress. It was up to us to confirm the action steps, and then to quarterly do progress reports to the board and quarterly progress reports to the community. And you can find all of that amazing information on the library's website under the strategic plan page, which is in the About section. So we have the matrix is up there. So at any time you can check on the progress of any of the action steps. The quarterly reports are up there. The full plan is up there. And there's also, if you ever need a reminder of what we did to get to that point, you can go through all of the steps that went into the strategic planning process. And so we were just getting into it. We had our matrix and we had our marching orders, and then COVID. So on March 16th, the library closed to the public, the building closed to the public. We never closed completely. We always had our virtual services. And for a while there, for a few weeks, when the governor had the stay-at-home order, we were sort of not doing much of anything but virtual as we sort of retooled and figured out what we could do. So Casey took her staff and they went through a whole process of how to produce programs virtually. And a lot of them were working from home. So they needed to figure out how to broadcast and do Facebook and then ultimately YouTube. They needed to get the equipment and supplies from the library. It took a little while for us. And then eventually, when the governor lifted the stay-at-home, we started doing takeout at the end of April. And people were really happy because by then they were pretty sick of all the things they had checked out of the library on March 14th and 15th. And so they were anxious to have new materials. So the very first day we opened up the holds and people started placing holds, we had over 700 holds.
Oh my goodness.
To kind of put that in perspective, like on a good day, if we have 150, maybe 200 max, but like to have 700 was totally overwhelming. And so we continued, that kind of died down a little once people got like all the things they wanted, it became more normal. And then toward the end of June, we decided that it would be safe to let people to come into the building. We did limit the number to 50 people in the building at a time, and that included about 13 staff members. And people were overjoyed. They liked takeout, but what they really, really, really wanted was to come back into the library and pick out their own stuff. And so we saw circulation started to go up. People started coming in and checking out. And so we were sort of back to normal until we had, until the numbers started to rise in Weld County, the positivity rate started to rise. And we were in the process of setting parameters for when we would go back to takeout. And then we had a staff member become ill. And that kind of pushed us a little bit forward because we had to quarantine some of our staff. But in that time when we were sort of retooling, we added 19 new resources and services. We figured out a way to issue library cards to people who had never had cards before, so that we could get a card into their hands and they could use our virtual services.
Nice.
We had 1,459 people use library takeout. Because takeout didn't work for everybody, we started something called Staff Picks to Go. So there were a lot of people that didn't know what books they wanted. They just kind of wanted books, or they just wanted movies, or they just wanted some picture books for their kids. And so we started doing something called Staff Picks to Go, where you could fill out a form and say, I'd just like 12 picture books. Just pick some picture books out for me. Or I'd like 3 or 4 mysteries. And then, of course, Casey's staff did virtual programming. So that's kind of how we met the needs of the public while we couldn't have the doors to our buildings and our bookmobile open. I thought because you're such an interested library users group that we would just talk a little bit about our 2021 budget. So our 2020 budget, as you may recall, we had a lot of money from oil and gas. So it kind of, we had a huge influx of revenue from oil and gas in our 2020 budget, and that will continue in our 2021 budget. So you can see that we still have a budget that's very close to the $5 million mark. So we're close to the $5 million mark, and that's due to the property taxes as usual, and a big chunk of that is still due to oil and gas. Where we expect to see a drop is next year for 2022 because of what happened earlier this year with the oil and gas industry.
Right.
And during COVID, the oil and gas industry kind of tanked. And then because of regulations in Weld County, some of the oil and gas companies are starting to pull people out, and they're not putting in as many wells as they were putting in. And so we expect in 2022 to see a drop in that revenue. But for 2021, we are really still in a good position. We're down a little bit because extraction oil and gas did go bankrupt, but we're not down appreciably. And then as far as revenue, our revenue is down a little bit. This year was a little unusual. We didn't spend a lot of our budget because things were just very different. And so we are only about at 75% of what we had planned to spend at this point in time. And yet we looked at things and we kind of reduced some areas. And so we're a little bit down for next year too in our expenditures. But overall, you don't have to worry about us. Right now, we are in good shape.
Good.
And so let's talk about the reason we're here tonight, which is the strategic plan. So as you recall from all your hard work, we came up with 4 focus areas, and that was from all those sticky notes and surveys and whiteboards and interviews and all those good things that we did last year. It all boiled down to 4 areas that we needed to work on. And the first of those was communication. And so we'll start with that one. And remember what we said about communication was that we will provide clear, transparent, and patron-focused communication that enhances relationships and builds awareness of the important role the library plays in the community. And just so you know about the important role that the library plays in the community, in the last governor's order, public health order, libraries are now designated critical. So we weren't originally designated critical, we are now. And so that, cool. The good news about that is we probably, unless things got really, really horribly bad, we probably would not have to shut down completely as we did initially, where we only had a couple people working in the building and we were only doing virtual services. But along with that critical designation comes some other responsibilities. So here are some really good things that we did, the highlights of the year in communication. You can see we have a marketing plan in place, and we're actually working on the 2021 marketing place. Katie established a staff branding group, and they're working through our branding, and they're trying to come up with some changes and to unify the visual and the written brand. And then Katie's also been in contact with other agencies and media and organizations, as well as the rest of us. But those were the highlights. And then the second area was partnerships. So what we said about partnerships was that we will strengthen partnerships throughout the community by responding to needs, engaging in collaborative efforts, and communicating consistently and clearly. So here's the highlights from partnerships. So we have regular outreach and coordination with other organizations. All through the pandemic, I have been in touch with our town managers, Shane Hale and Nick Wharton from the town of Severance, our school superintendent. We had regular meetings, our fire chief, and then their communications people. So Katie was in on those meetings too. So we kept in constant communication to see how we could help each other out. And then some of the projects, we launched an ebook platform for the school district called Sora. So the kids in the school now have access to our ebooks, but they're filtered through the school so the kids don't get inappropriate material, where the public library doesn't filter material because it's up to you what you want to read, view, listen to. But the schools had a concern about that. And so Sora makes the ebooks and e-materials available to them, but it goes through the school district's filter. And Bud and his team worked on that, and we're really happy, and the school's really happy about that. What the school district discovered once the pandemic hit was that they didn't have enough hot spots to get all of their people connected, because despite what everyone thinks, in our library district, school district area, not everybody has great connectivity. And so we provided hotspots that would get internet access to the students. And we're still working on that. We got a state grant to provide even more hotspots. So Bud has been working with Trevor Timmons to figure out how we can increase that access to the kids, because that's critical now with online education. Katie and her team worked on a monthly resource email to teachers. Since we couldn't go into the schools anymore, we needed a way to communicate with the teachers so that they could serve the kids better. And so they have a monthly resource email to the teachers. And then we worked on cybersecurity videos and launched those with the town of Severance and Windsor, because we know that there are lots of internet scams out there. And so it's important for people to understand about cybersecurity and how you can keep you and your family safe. And then one of the fun things we did was we participated with the Windsor Severance Fire Rescue when they did the birthday parades with the fire trucks and the police department. Well, we also had our bookmobile participating and driving around and making people happy in a time when they were pretty much cooped up in their houses.
Yay.
The next area of the strategic plan was the programs and services. And the statement for that was, we will improve and expand programs and services through community feedback, balancing traditional library services with new and innovative learning opportunities. So, when we couldn't do programs in person, we had to rethink some things. And so we did. We offered a whole lot of new things and services to support the community during COVID. And we continued to discuss and collaborate with the town of Windsor. And Katie and Casey, would you like to say anything about programming and what we're doing?
Well, one thing that we found worked really well was to provide a programming kit with our programs, meaning, Cindy, you probably know, I don't know if you've done any of the adult programs that have the to-go kits, but
I have.
meaning, typically with a lot of our adult programs, you come in and you do a thing. You make a craft, you learn how to cook something, you gather and discuss a book. And so we didn't want people to miss out on those activities. So we put together kits and people could come pick those kits up and then view the accompanying program and enjoy it that way. So that's something that we found worked really, really well, actually across all age groups, not just for adults. Our teens love that. They're doing a lot of cooking and crafting type programs that have kids accompanying them. And then book clubs have worked out really well this way. And again, across the board for all ages, whether it's our story explorers for our early literacy 0 to 5 age group, or Not Your Boring Book Club, that's for our tweens for like 9 to 12 years old. And then our adult programming team just started a new book club called Better Than the Movie. So they're reading books that are either going to be made into a movie or already have, and answer that age-old question, which one's better, the book or the movie? So that's what we have found works really well in these times of not being able to gather. And I know that that's what other public libraries have turned to as well, and are also having success. So that's what we'll continue doing until we can start to let people in our doors again and program in person. We did have a little luck towards the tail end of the summer, early fall, with some outdoor programming. We did some programming in the park, some story times. We have a new story walk that was put up in Severance, so we programmed after that, the install there. So we've kind of found what works, and continuing to pursue that as long as we need to.
I want to let you know, because I think some of you may enjoy this, that on December 15th, we are going to have a community reading of A Visit from St. Nicholas, aka The Night Before Christmas. And we have a lot of our community partners, the mayors, the fire chief, will be reading parts of The Night Before Christmas to the community. It'll be a live Facebook event, so we would hope you will join us on that night. It should be lots of fun.
Thanks, Anne. Good plug.
I'm signed up already.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's going to be great fun. I'm really excited for it.
Right. So then the last of the four is space. And what we said with space was we will evaluate all opportunities, remodeling, renting, building new, shared spaces to provide adequate space for the programs and services that the community needs and wants. So we relaunched the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee. They were never really gone. They were working on things, but we sort of appointed new people to the Long Range Facilities Planning Committee, and we kicked off a short and long range facilities planning process, which we are in the midst of right now. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that. So this is what we're working toward. We're working toward a short-term, long-term facilities plan for the district that evaluates 6 space options that were outlined in the strategic plan and requested by our community. We know, I mean, you all know this, we all know this, growth is the big thing. Everything, even with COVID, everything is still exploding. It seems like there are new houses every time you take a road in our communities toward the outskirts. There are more and more houses. And we also know that our per capita, I mean, what we would like to be is somewhere in the 75th percentile, which would be about 27,040 square feet. And if we wanted to be in the 95th percentile, we would need 41,700 square feet of space. Currently, we have 17,500 feet of space. And so we're a bit shy of being at that 75th percentile and way off being at the 95th percentile.
Yeah.
Since the current library opened in 1997, the library district has grown from 9,834 residents to 26,772. And that number is on the low side. So that's the number called the legal service area that the state assigns to us. And they have a formula. It is scientific. However, that's probably on the low side because the town of Windsor estimates that they're closer to 30,000. And Severance claims that they have about 8,000 people. Then we have the West Greeley people, and then we have the people in unincorporated Welch County. So one of our new board members, Ron Dunworth, he did a lot of work with the North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Organization, and he has projections for 2045. And you can see on that map all of those brightly colored areas they're exploding. One of those areas is Severance. And then another area is West Greeley. Those are the places where they expect explosive growth in the next 25 years. So much so that when you look at the projections from 2015 to 2045, you see a huge number of people moving in just inside our district. We're not talking Northern Colorado. We're not talking Weld County. We're talking within the confines of the library district.
Oh my gosh, that's obscene.
That's a huge number of people. So something that the library board has to address because
Oh my
we
gosh.
can't possibly keep one little tiny building with that many people coming into our community.
You need to rearrange the furniture.
I know. So Katie is actually, we did not hire a consultant. Katie is actually facilitating this process for our facility planning. And we've been having working sessions every month. And we have the long range planning committee meets every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and you're welcome to join any of those. So when we talked to people in the strategic plan and gathered all that feedback, we know that they told us, what one thing would you change or improve? Space, materials, and programming. All of those things, materials and programming require space. They all go back to space.
Yeah.
And so it all revolves around that fourth thing, space. When we actually went through and analyzed all that, there were a total of 845 comments from 4 of the questions. And those were more space, specific solutions, location, children's space, and noise. Those were the words that kept popping up from all of those comments. And so when you looked at that, you can see that like a larger building, that's the blue part of this circle, that was part of it. 36 people talked about having a larger building. 30.5% talked about having a branch library. And then 18% said, don't change and stop asking for more money. And then 14.7% said we needed to expand, but they didn't really, expansion on our current location wasn't always specified. So one of the things we know is defined and expanded children's area. That came up in a lot of the comments. People want a place where they can share spaces with their kids. They want more space for materials. They want, if you can see in that lower picture, there's a mom sitting on a little tiny itty bitty baby chair while her child is playing with the felt board. And same thing up in the top one where the mom is reading to her child. She's sitting in an itty bitty little child's chair. So, there was a lot of comments about space for children and enlarging that space. And I love the photos, and thank you, Katie, for making such a beautiful presentation. 13% of those space comments focused on noise. It's noisy in the building. Like some of the people still would like that sacred quiet. They want the library to be quiet and peaceful where they can come and kind of get away from the noise of the world. And so the noise of the kids really irritates them. And so they commented on the noise. They wanted expanded quiet spaces. So yeah, we have a quiet space, but there's not quite enough room. They wanted more collaboration spaces. Places where they could get together in small groups. Even the staff needed places where they could get together that wasn't out on the public floor. So this is our 2019 system bookings. This means bookings for meeting spaces. And let me just get to that slide. We kind of
Well, we have
did we go ahead, Katie.
We have 3 main meeting rooms, our large conference room and then our 2 small conference rooms. And one thing that we heard from feedback was that folks wanted more dedicated meeting space. And so we analyze our system bookings because our rooms are consistently used. And we found that that is true because the majority of the time, almost 3/4 of the time, our meeting rooms are booked specifically for library events. When they're not being used, what?
Which they should be.
When they're not being used for library events, they're being used for staff purposes, so for staff meetings, and then they're only available for patrons 6% of the time. So we'd love to see or have more meeting space available so that way patrons can use our spaces more. It's not just about us and our programming, but also, you know, where can our community members gather?
Right, thank you. So this slide kind of shows you that small amount that's available for patron bookings, which right now, none of our meeting rooms are available and they're being used by staff who we needed to spread the staff out in our building. So they weren't sitting on top of each other when they were in the building. And so they're using the rooms. The large meeting room is actually our quarantine area right now. And we had worked out to have board meetings in there when we could. And now we've gone back to all virtual board meetings too. So in 2019, there were 1,524 approved events in the meeting spaces.
1,024.
1,524.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we know we need more programming spaces. There's some bar graphs with the number of programs and the number of attendees at the programs. And that went down a little bit, and that was because in 2019, we stopped counting the lobby stops and the pause sessions, the pause with the dogs sessions, because the state changed the way you should count your programs. And so you see a little drop there, but you still see the huge number of attendees we had in our programs in those years, which shows that we need the space. Our offsite locations, we use or used the RE4 schools, not this year. We have used the parks, and we did that again once we could loosen up a little in the fall. We used Severance Town Hall, we used the Pooter Learning Center, and we used local businesses like Toast, Wine and Coffee Bar for some of our programs. So we do, as much as we can, we tried to use offsite locations. Unless we pay a rental fee, we can't always program in the Windsor parks. So, you know, they did loosen that up a little bit, but like their parks are busy themselves. And so it's not like they can just hand over their space to us. And the same thing with the rec center. The school district is pretty good about letting us use space, but it's not like everything is free for us to use when we try to go outside our building. The Pooter Learning Center was an example where they need to be compensated when we used their space. We couldn't use it for free. So in 2019, we had 224 waitlisted programs or uses. So we had people waiting to get into programs.
Thanks.
They were on the wait list. And so we could use more space, so we could do more programs, so that we could do concurrent programs. The KIT programs, we just can't offer more sections of anything because we don't have any more space to do that. And there's a lack of space for us to prepare for our programs. And there's also a lack of staff. So if we wanted to add more programs, we would need more people. So it just doesn't work when you have a finite amount of space. And we need more space for materials. We are desperately in need of space for materials. So when people tell you nobody reads books anymore, if you look at that, so there's the numbers, from the Pew Research studies from September 2019. The typical American adult reads 4 books. Our patrons read on average 9 books. So people in our community still do read. They like to read. And just as well, you don't need physical books. Everybody uses ebooks. Here's a chart that shows the comparison between ebooks and the number of physical adult print books that we circulated. So, not everybody has transitioned to ebooks. We still have people who love to pick up a real book and hold it in their hands.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Katie.
And just to note on the previous slide about ebooks, that's including double-digit growth in ebooks over the last few years. So it's still, even with exponential growth in ebooks, it's still nowhere close to what you see with physical materials.
And so in this slide, you can see the collection's growing while circulation is leveling off. We can see that the circulation rates are leveling off. The size of the collection is still increasing. And this causes problems because there's an increasing amount of items in the collection, but not an increasing amount of items getting checked out, which leads to more and more items on our shelves. So we figure 2 years, 44 shelves. So we
just for movies?
We would be completely out of space. And the problem with that, we're trying to get people to keep things out longer. We started doing automatic renewals, where stuff just automatically gets renewed for you. You don't even have to think about it. If no one's waiting for it with the hold, it just automatically gets renewed. We want you to keep stuff if no one else is waiting, because that gets stuff off our shelves, which makes room for other stuff. And so without the space to grow, your circulation stagnates. People will take out the new stuff, but the stuff that they might discover that's a little bit older is not there for them to check out. And that's what happens when you have to keep discarding the stuff. The adult print collection has no space to grow, and so circulations have no room to grow. And without that variety of items, people keep continuing to read the same stuff they always read, like the new Patterson books, but they don't branch out and explore other things.
Nor do they have time to, because if it doesn't move very quickly and it's not discoverable and it's not convenient to search, there's not time for those not immediately valuable items to find a home in the collection before they're shoved out the door to make room for the next new thing.
Right. And so this is a picture of what our shelves look like, and that's not good. The standard in library shelving is to have each shelf have 2/3, just 2/3 of it with books and 1/3 of empty space, so you can display things face out, because we know that face out is where you need to be. It's marketing. People see things and it's that impulse buy. It's that impulse checkout because you saw something that looked really interesting and piqued your interest.
Yeah.
Other libraries hold on to things, for 3 to 5 years before they toss them. We're having to do that a whole lot faster. You can see our reading habits versus other libraries' reading habits in this slide. So we're deaccessioning things a whole lot faster than we should be because we don't have the space for things.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you lose when you do that? You lose depth of collection. So you don't always have an author's earlier works. You don't have the classics, and you don't have that opportunity to discover things that just might be delightful to you if we were able to hold on to them a little longer. And we need increased storage space. That's our lovely container out in the parking lot that does not have books in it. It has programming materials, things that are big and bulky that take up space in the building. And so we don't have, we don't have storage space, and we really can't keep putting more containers in the parking lot because then that takes up parking spaces, and then we're not in compliance with the town of Windsor's number of parking spaces that you need for the per capita or square feet. Sorry, square feet. And there's like our staff spaces, which those of you who are in the building, you know what it looks like. Everybody is on top of everybody. Materials are way too crowded and too close. The staff just don't have adequate workspace, which is not great. And when we asked the staff, like, what is it you need? They said, we need workspace, we need desk space, we need work areas, we need storage, we need programming space. That was according to a survey that we did with the staff this past October. So yes, that's something that the staff are desperate for, is in order to do their work, they need that space. So the challenges, the needs, the priorities were that defined and expanded children's area, more programming spaces, more space for materials, adequate staff workspace, more collaboration space, expanded quiet spaces, and increased storage space. So what are we doing moving forward? These are the 6 space exploration options that we're digging into. So the existing building, new space, rent, buy, lease, rent, lease, buy, shared spaces, offsite staffing, and developer partnerships. And here's our timeline for this whole facilities planning. We started in September at our working session, going through all the population projections. We had a design study from Ratio Design, which we went over in November. In December, we'll be talking about renting, leasing, offsite staffing, and then in January, building new spaces. And then, in February, we have items planned for those meetings. So you're welcome to join us in those work sessions and listen in on what the board is exploring. And then we also do a recap at our monthly board meetings.
The work sessions are on the second Thursday of every month at 5:30. And we post them on the library board page, just like we do the library meeting. So you can log on via Zoom. You can also, if you're interested in any of the previous presentations, for example, last month's on the Ratio Design, some new ideas for how we can maximize space in the current building. If you click on the date of the meeting, you can pull up the entire packet. And myself or any one of us are happy to answer any questions that you may have from previous presentations or get you any documents that you need.
It's been a fascinating project and it's been a lot of work. And, Katie and Casey and Bud have put a lot of time in, and so have our board members, exploring options. And we have had multiple meetings with our partners, the town of Windsor, the town of Severance, the school district, but also the chambers of commerce, the DDA, the Downtown Development Agency. We have a meeting with Ames Community College coming up tomorrow, and with the Windsor Housing Authority on Friday. So we had a whole list of people that we needed to meet with and find out, what are their needs and what are they working on, and is there a possible way for us to work together? And it's been really, really a thorough process, and I hope you'll join us, at least if you can, for at least one of the meetings, just to see what goes on. So now questions. Now it's your turn. Do you have questions? We went through this kind of quickly, so we could kind of stay with our 1 hour time frame. But ask us questions, or let's have a discussion. Let's talk. How are we doing? What could we be doing differently? What should we be doing differently? Would you like more or less communication from us? You're our advisory committee. We want your feedback.
Well, you're certainly staying busy during this COVID year. I will give you that.
Yes, we are.
No, the staff is doing great, but I am still wondering about partnerships. Have you not come up with any good partnerships for leasing space of any kind?
That is part of part of what we're investigating. What we
Right, but
found,
nothing yet.
what we found when we met with the town of Windsor and the town of Severance and the school district and the fire district is they're also looking for more space.
Sure.
So one of the options we're looking at is moving some of our staff off-site and having offices in another building. But when we met with them, to ask, do you have any space that we could lease or rent from you? They said, no, actually, we're looking for spaces for our staff too, that town hall, they've moved people out of Windsor Town Hall into the Public Works building, and they won't have much room there for much longer. Right. And so they're looking at space. The fire chief would like to move some of his staff out of the building on 7th Street because there's not quite enough room there. The school district at some point will probably need a larger building. The administrative building, Katie and I were in there. They've used every bit of space, like even in the basement, they remodeled some of their rooms. And we know the town of Severance is bursting at the seams at Town Hall and is looking at eventually building a new town hall. So none of our governmental partners really had space for us where we could collaborate. So we are looking at some buildings. It's in part of the plan is for us to look at some buildings in Windsor that are available, and maybe as a partnership opportunity. That's one of the things that's being explored. We did talk with developers. We talked with Chris Ruff, and he has space at East Point, that he would be willing, to build and lease to us.
Sure.
We've identified some buildings over near Diamond Valley on Automation Drive. We identified a building that's on Ash Street behind Taco Bell. So we are working on it, Cindy, but it seems like everybody is out of space.
And I have no doubt that you guys are working hard. That is not, I just want you to think. I know that you're working hard. The problem is that you can't stop growth. And I mean, we were already having a space problem before, and now the population has doubled, and trying to find space, I know, is going to be an issue. But unless the time comes where we in Windsor actually approve a new library building, this is where we're at. And I know it's hard on you, and I'm sorry we put it all on you, but
it's all right. It's been good. I mean, one of the options in the 6 things we're exploring is a branch library. So there is been an offer. That's one of the things the board will be considering. There's been an offer from Severance. There's a piece of property that is next to their current town hall that they have purchased. And they would be very excited to see a branch library on that piece of property. So that's an option.
Great.
There was another property up in Severance that was part of this facilities plan that had gone through Severance planning and was intended for retail, and we explored that option. What else, Katie?
You're on it.
We are
you probably know now every single vacant building and vacant lot within 10 miles.
We also are exploring, because it came up in the strategic plan, options for remodeling our current library on 3rd Street.
Yes.
So we've been looking at that building, and we talked to an architect about going vertical, which, as the architect said, all things are possible. If you want to spend enough money and time, you can do it. But now also we're looking at horizontal expansion, which came up during the whole strategic planning process. So that's now back on the table again with some information we got from the school board. And so there's lots of options that we're looking at, and the job for the board is going to be to decide what they need to do. What will the budget allow? What kind of, no one wants to go back to the taxpayers right now. for a mill levy increase. So with the funding we have available and the reserve funding we have, what's going to be possible for us to do? And this is a short-term, long-term building facilities plan. So what do we do immediately to address some of the needs, and what can we do in the future to address those needs? Bud, Casey, Katie, do you have any comments you want to toss in there?
Guess not.
Well, I'm thinking.
Does anybody else have questions? I mean, you know, Cindy asked questions. How about the rest of you? Do you have questions? Anything you'd like us to go into in a little more depth?
I just have one question about increasing revenue from all the building that's going on. What's the projections for, say, the next 5 years on revenue based on the increased housing?
It will go up, and you know, we're very grateful that the voters in Colorado got rid of Gallagher. Because we were really nervous when we thought the Gallagher rate was supposed to go from 7.15 down to 5.88.
Ooh.
And so that was going to decrease, even though there was increased building with that drop. We were anticipating, you know, things might level off. Now that we can keep it at 7.15, we should see, because of all the housing that goes up. But the fire chief likes to say, housetops are consumers of services. What you want is industry and businesses, because they don't use the services as much as they pay into the service. But there's no doubt, John, that those increased numbers of houses will help us. They will try to keep us stable, because we are more than likely to see a drop in oil and gas, at least in 2022. They're anticipating about a 60% drop in oil and gas, which may mean that we have a 30% drop in revenue. Now, does that mean we're going to have to like shut our doors and stop services? Probably not. It's going to go back to a more reasonable level like we had in 2018, where, you know, our budget wasn't $5 million. Our budget was closer to $3.5 million, and we managed. So we may not be able to grow or provide all the services, but those increases in housing will help make up for that loss in oil revenue.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I just want to say thank you. What you put together made a lot of sense to me. It was very comprehensive.
All right, thank you, Noah.
Hey,
Todd.
Anna, I think this has been great to kind of see the fruits of the labors and see where it's going. You know, it's been a crazy year, obviously. So it's been cool that this has been a neat meeting too. I've been in Zoom meetings all day, but this is neat to see the production, what's come out of it and where you're going. And I think it's exciting. Obviously, just like the fire district, you know, we all have a lot of budgetary challenges coming up. But I think you guys, the way you're approaching it is awesome. You know, just the positivity of it and just how well you're kind of putting it in the different sections, and the way it's explained in this was really awesome. It kind of opened my eyes. I go to the library when we're getting ready to go camping. I check out a bunch of books. My wife, she uses like every one of our library cards to use every ebook possible throughout the month. So, you know, we're kind of the interesting library users, but I really think this is a great presentation. I appreciate it.
Natalie, being on staff, did you have any comments?
I'm just always amazed at the amount of work that is put in to everything that staff's doing, especially now when I feel like we also have the extra work of coming up with things to do with COVID and all those new programs and way that we have developed things throughout this year because of COVID. And so I also am impressed.
We have to give Natalie and her team a shout out, because we have a new because we have a new integrated library system. We now can join Prospector, which we are soft launching this week. And if
Ooh.
everything goes well, we will make a big splash about it. But for those people who have wanted Prospector for years,
Mm-hmm.
now going to be possible. And Natalie and Bud and those folks in technical services and IT have been working on it. But Natalie is our interlibrary loan person, so we have to give her a lot of credit.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
She has done a great job, and I will tell you, but don't tell the others.
Okay.
Just
Uh-oh.
between us, don't tell anyone else. If you were to go to Prospector tonight and try to check out a book or make a request using your Clearview Library District card number, it would work.
Yes.
Don't tell the others.
I'm
I'm
You
not,
can get a
told.
jump on it.
Mason didn't let Lisa in on that little secret. So we're gonna have a little
It's not
conversation
public
about
yet.
that. Yeah.
Not
That's what I'm
public
saying.
yet.
He doesn't even know.
This is an
Oh,
You
exclusive.
found out something before him.
Whoa.
You can lord that over him for the 48 hours
you go.
until we tell the world, or the 96 hours.
This
Because
is
he
an
gets, you know,
exclusive
us
for the
big
Strategic
old
Planning
people.
Committee.
Yeah,
Because we're special.
of course you are.
Yeah.
That's right.
But if we don't
No,
own
I really do want to commend everyone at the library for not only your innovative thinking over all of this year, which has been so incredible for everyone, but for coming up with different ways to have programs, to keep us involved, to keep us engaged, to figure out how to get the books to the people and the kits to all of us that, you know, are scared to death to go out the door because we've been told we're going to get sick. So I want to thank all of you, and I do appreciate, because you've worked so hard just keeping the town going with your programs and the books and keeping us involved. Plus, you've been having to deal with the strategic plan stuff too. And I do appreciate all of your work, and thank you very much.
You're welcome, Cindy.
Thanks for saying
So-
that, Cindy.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So Mr. Bassler, I see you're on there. Do you have any comments or questions for us?
No comments or questions. I've sat through a lot of meetings and it's been a struggle through COVID, and the library team has done a wonderful job staying engaged in the community. And I'm very happy with that. And I look forward to dealing with explosive growth.
Yeah.
Yes, as a Severance Town Board member, that is one of the things you are dealing with. So,
We just finished our budget this year, our last meeting, which we're going to redo since we failed to record the meeting. So we get to do it one more time. So yes, we're dealing with our growth. So I think as Windsor is too. So.
yeah. And West Greeley.
And
It's
West
just
Greeley.
everywhere. It is everywhere. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. All right. Well, we can make this slide deck available, and you know, in case you have questions, please contact me or Katie or Bud or Casey. We'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And
One more
if
quick question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ann. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
When do you have the short-term, long-term planning? What did you call that meeting?
The committee meetings are every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and you
I
can
got the
join
1
us
that I
right
did.
via Zoom. The working sessions are the second Thursday of the month at 5:30.
Right.
And you can also join us via Zoom for those.
Except for tomorrow, which
Except for tomorrow, yeah, this month it's a week early because next month's regular board meeting is on the
That's right.
second Thursday because December.
Don't
Yeah.
be screwing with the old lady.
join us tomorrow for the work session.
That's right.
Roll the dice any given Thursday. You got a 50-50 shot that we're having a board meeting. It's
Right.
cool.
We
Stop
will
by.
have a board meeting on the 10th, but it won't be a working session. It'll be our regular board meeting on December.
Of course. Yeah.
So, yes,
Never did I.
schedule gets a little bit messed up in December.
All
right. Well,
right.
if there are no other questions, thank you for your time and attention this evening, and I hope all of you have a very happy holiday. Good night.
Thank you, and same to you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye. Have a great